In the previous video, you may have noticed when you multiply two binomials together, one being positive, one being negative with the second term. Let's say you have 5 plus root 3 times 5 minus root 3. The second term's sign is opposite. This is like a difference of two squares, or what we will call a conjugate. When you're trying to rationalize a numerator or denominator with two terms, including radicals, you use something called multiplying by the conjugate to rationalize either the numerator or denominator. In this case, we're asked to rationalize each denominator. So our goal is to look at what the binomial is currently and then multiply it by the conjugate. In this case, we're trying to rationalize each denominator, so our conjugate to 6 plus root 3 will be 6 minus root 3. Whatever we multiply to the denominator, we also have to multiply to the numerator. This will give us 2 times 6, which is 12, 2 times negative root 3, which is negative 2 root 3, root 5 times 6, so plus 6 root 5, and positive root 5 times negative root 3. This will be negative root 15. That's the numerator. In the denominator, we'll have 6 minus 3. This simplifies. We get 12 minus 2 root 3 plus 6 root 5 minus root 15 all over 3. In part B, we have 3 root 2 minus root 7 all over 4 root 2 plus 2 root 5. We want to rationalize the denominator, and so we are going to multiply the numerator and denominator by the denominator's conjugate. So 4 root 2 minus 2 root 5. Whatever we multiply in the denominator, we also have to multiply in the numerator. Now we need to FOIL. In the numerator, I can see that this is not going to simplify nicely, so I'm actually just going to save myself a little bit of time and leave them as their binomial factors. In the denominator, I know that 4 times root 2 multiplied to 4 times root 2 will be 16 times 2, or just 32. My two middle terms will always add to 0 because the outer and the inner are identical except for their signs. And lastly, a positive 2 root 5 times a negative 2 root 5 will be a negative 4 times 5. Let's rewrite that. 4 times 5 is 20, 32 minus 20 is 12, so our denominator will be 12. And if I rewrite the two binomials in the numerator, I'll have 3 root 2 minus root 7 times 4 root 2 minus 2 root 5. Now let's rationalize each numerator. In this case, we need to look at the numerator to determine what our conjugate will be. I have a root 6 minus 2, so I'm going to multiply it by a root 6 plus 2. Whatever I multiply the numerator by is what I also need to multiply the denominator by. The denominator is not going to look any better once I distribute or FOIL that binomial set, so I'm just going to rewrite it as root 3 plus 7 times root 6 plus 2. In the numerator, I'm going to have 6 minus 4. This simplifies to 2 over root 3 plus 7 times root 6 plus 2. Let's look at D. We have root x minus h minus root x all over h. This will come up in your next class. probably very quickly. So we have root x minus h minus root x, so our conjugate would be root x minus h plus root x. And whatever we multiply in the numerator, we also need to multiply in the denominator. This will give me x minus h minus x all over h times root x minus h plus root x. X minus x is just 0, and so we're left with negative h over h times the square root of x minus h plus the square root of x. Notice that my h's will divide out conveniently, and I'm left with negative 1 over square root of x minus h plus root x. Now let's look at e. We have the square root of 3x minus 2 over root x plus 7. We're trying to rationalize the numerator, so we'll multiply the numerator by the binomial 3x under a radical plus 2. And the same thing will be in the denominator, root 3x plus 2. When we FOIL, we'll get 3x minus 4, and the denominator is not going to simplify. So we'll just rewrite it as two binomials, root x plus 7 and root 3x plus 2. And lastly, we have root x minus 5 over root 2x minus 8. If we multiply by the conjugate in the numerator, we'll have root x plus 5. And whatever we multiply in the numerator, we also have to multiply in the denominator, root x plus 5. And now let's FOIL that. We'll have an x minus 25. In the denominator, we'll be left with two binomial factors. I'm not going to FOIL them out. Root 2x minus 8 times root x plus 5.